Here we are, back with part two of our evaluations for lesson two for our Longa level supporters. So I'm just going to give you a few pointers here. We talked a little bit about scoring, Matthias, for your entry, and I'm going to show you a few things if that's cool. Okay. So first of all, there were some kind of reversed stem directions, which you can just type X to make them go the correct direction. Now here I think you may recall that I was kind of encouraging you to adopt a time signature of 3/4, and it didn't really seem settled what that was to be. Right, so just a little bit of confusion at the beginning. People didn't know how to count to get the right idea across. But 6/8 is not really going to work with this beautiful 3/4 line here. So what you really need is this. You need to tie that to a quarter note, right? So this is really how all of this should be notated, rather than this dotted rhythm all the way across, right? So I would say, if you're going to save this piece, and you should because it's a very cool piece, renotate all of these rhythms like this, and then just simply add 3/4. This is going to look a little scary at first because it sort of reformats everything. But see, that really works a lot better with the indication of 3/4 and so on. Now here, in this section here, you might remember that I was saying that this is actually a 3/2 and not a 6/4, 3/2 and not 6/4 timing. Right, so if you were just to mark that here, let's see. Okay, you can just mark this as that, right? Same exact thing. And then here, this should also be 3/2 as well, right? And then this can just turn into a dotted whole note, right? And you don't have to worry about this other thing. And this can turn into a whole note. Because really what you're doing here is you're counting 1 and 2 and 3, and you're not counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? You would have to have some kind of emphasis on the middle of each bar because it's compound time, right? So that's okay. I would say just turn that into 3/2. You can turn this. I think you could actually possibly even continue the 3/2 on these next 6 bars, right? Just reformat this from 4/4 to 3/2 and just have the ties, if you want to, or have a 2/2, or which is the same as cut time. All right, and then here, the problem here is that these pitches just were hard for the player to read. So if we just do this, then the player reads it all as thirds, right? And that way it's easier for them to finger because they're thinking in terms of set finger positions. Then here, you can just turn these into all sharps, right? Turn that into a sharp, and then turn this into a B sharp. Oops, sorry. So yeah, so if you just were to use these two strategies, all sharps and white keys, and then all flats and white keys, then that's just much clearer, and it doesn't matter to the player that they've got to sort of rethink flats and sharps from bar to bar. They will get the idea, okay? But that is especially in situations where you've got whole tones. All right, so I've used a little bit of our time to talk about that. We really should be talking about other things, but that's all right. I'll give you another couple extra minutes. All right, so I'm just going to leave some of those changes here. Yeah. So now let's talk about our scoring principles. Bowing, lyrical phrasing, contrast of register, and then also that this is a study in the contrast between the piano and the violin, with thinking about the different functions, the contrast of functions between the two instruments, and anything that is different in their texture and the fundamental character of each instrument. All right, so immediately you're doing the right thing here. You're having these very bell-like uh, patterns here, to which the violin comes in very assuredly and very nicely here. Now, um, as you may recall, I think mezzo piano is a bit of a cop out. Okay, and this is not an accusation against you. Please don't take that personally. But I just feel that like mezzo piano, you're not really committing to anything. You're just really in a gray area, right? It's better for this to be piano and for this to be piano, and that way you have somewhere to go, right? Dolce, but what does that mean? Really, it's better to have the dolce right here. Okay, that's where you want it. So, I mean, what does that mean? If this was P dolce, you could go like this, you know, right? Right? You'd have somewhere to go, right? As opposed to mezzo piano, where can you go? Mezzo forte. And you're still in mezzo, right? But here, you go, you cross, you push towards forte, right? A little bit, right? Or you could put this here. Do you see what I mean? With piano, you have more room for nuances, right? And you're not stuck in a place where it's just really kind of gray and blechy, just mezzo anything. Unless you're really using mezzo to go somewhere, mezzo piano and you go to forte, or mezzo forte and you drop down to piano, or you're going between the two. I just really feel that mezzo anything is just really, not cool. All right, so I'll stop messing up your score. Sorry. All right. So yeah, and I feel that you may have missed a few places. I mean, this might sound really good slurred, just that can't, carrying this over in a really smooth, sweet way. Once again, how would that hurt, right? Or, since you have a C sharp and a D sharp down there, right? So yeah, I would say if you're following it with F and B flat, that's really what you want to do, right? Okay. So nice contrast between functions. Pizzicato here, and then the more flowing piano part there, and it's almost exactly just a reversal of what you're doing here, the bell-like thing against the flowing violin part. So those are good ideas. Okay. Light but with energy. Now, a tempo. This is 100, and that is, excuse me, overshot. That is 120, right? So you don't want a tempo there, right? Light but with energy. That's perfectly fine. You might want to set it up like this, right? Hang on. And you could, you could just, I don't know, find the Italian terms for that if you want to really do a tempo and those other kinds of things. Yeah, and this is all nice and flowing. I like the fact that you don't sort of step on the parts don't really step on each other's toes too much, but they are close together. And the contrast will be good, but I would say, yeah, you might want to up this slightly if this was forte espressivo, right? And some dipping down. Once again, you've got no nuances here. No, there's no hairpins anywhere. So it's kind of the lines don't really. The player can of course inject whatever expression they like, but if you're saying, if you intend this to be espressivo, then you'd really have to add some expression. You have to tell the player what you want. Now you could hear that this figure here, it kind of ended up feeling a bit messier than you thought, didn't it? Yeah, I just you're going boom da da boom da da boom da da, right? At that tempo, 120, a little less clear perhaps than you would have felt, and especially against this, right? This kind of more kind of just sort of clumped together tones. It doesn't really lend this line very much clarity. Okay, this is nice though. The way that you came out of it. This is all very beautiful. And I mean, why not? Right? There's very little slurring in this piece. And there's so much that you could do. What would that hurt? And then turn these into dynamic phrases. Right? right? I mean, there's just so much potential here to do different things. So yeah, now, and once again, tremolo, do not write tremolo out in text. Always do this, okay? And you don't need this word, right? Always write tremolo. Some older, kind of oldie, moldy scores, they write out tremolo, and you just need to do this, right? That is all you need to do. And then you don't need norm, and you don't need trem. Now, as you probably noticed, and this is actually going to be a tip for my next book, the 100 more orchestration tips, because I'm noticing people are doing this more and more. People are trying to slur from a harmonic tone to like a fingered tone. So in this case, you would just press down, like the player is holding down this as a harmonic tone, and then here they kind of press down to just to turn it into like a fingered tone. And I mean that kind of works, but I mean there's not really the sense of slurring as much. Remember that Donald suggested that you just keep it going like all the way through, right? To here, that would be his preference as a player, is to do something like this, right? So just to keep the sense of harmonics going, right? And he just felt that would be very strong. So, anyways, so consider that. But just for everybody watching, harmonic nodes are not something that you can just sort of, slur from in and out of. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because the string wants to keep sounding wants to keep going. So like if you were to just like touch the note and then take your hand away, or take your finger away from the string, it wouldn't want to correct itself very well, and it might actually sound kind of icky, as it found its natural, it found its single node length from the second partial, right? Okay. This is all very good. I love the contrasts there. The sixths were, Don had a problem with them, but Donald had a problem, but I don't think that they are that bad. I like that, and I like this too. If Donald had had more time to work out some of these, I think that they would have come across better. So good use of functions, good. I mean, lyrical phrasing. I mean, you could have done a lot more in terms to make it sound lyrical. Just to really get a lot out of it, and I think that's what Donald was sort of pushing for, is what that was what he really wanted to dig into as a string player, something where this would be more lyrical, say, or maybe there would be less of these double stops, and things more just like a leading line, and let the piano just worry about all the harmony, right? But I mean, look, you've got your own ideas, and they're strong enough as they are. This is kind of an interesting idea, which is to have the violin an octave below the leading line in the piano, and you can hear for yourself how well that works or not, right? It works if things are nicely placed and there isn't too much crowding around the violin line. All right. Now here, this is cool because you're going to a harmonized part rather than just octave doubling. So that works to an extent, yes. But I mean, you just have to allow for the violin being a supporting part, and if that is the insinuation and it's scored well, then it will work. Okay. And you're setting this up too as well, which was nice. So I would say this was a successful piece. It was nicely scored. As I've seen some other pieces by Matthias, and well done. Really no big issues anywhere except for those notational issues, and just a few things in terms of harmony and so on to help the player. This is a little strange. This originally like copied, but you can fix this all just by going like this. Boom. Right? But you lose. Yeah, were there... Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you can fix things like that just very, very easily with these buttons down here to change things back to a regular thing. This would be so nice, just maybe let the player know to have a more sostenuto, more, more connected kind of a left hand. That would be good. All right, well, that's all I got to say about this. Nice work, and, looking forward to the next one. Next piece. This really cool, active, aggressive little album leaf by Gretchen. And it was interesting here because it just had a really just really modern sensibility to it. Just kind of you know really great sense of relentless forward motion. And yeah, um, so let's talk about a few things, a few notational things. I think this thing here, fortissimo and then piano, you could just, if you need to notate it like this, or they were actually saying say forte and piano, whatever. You don't need to continue to mark it everywhere. I would say just do this. Oops. Uh, Sorry, let me try that again. I have my caps lock on. Right, just mark right, simile, and then you don't need this over and over again. Right, same thing here. Fortissimo, that's all that the player needs to know, right? They will figure it out. Yeah, same thing here. Don't need it. Now, if you need things to be piano from here on, right, then I would say mark it here. All right, now once again, I'm noticing that all of your notation marks are in Planten. So in case you missed the dotted brev lesson 1 evaluations, just going to show this to you, Gretchen. It's just the easiest thing in the world if you're working with Sibelius. You've selected the note under which you want the dynamic, okay? So you're going to do Command E to start the blinking cursor for the dynamics, and just keep your thumb sitting on the Command key or the Control key if you're in Mac, and then just type, as you hold the key down, type FF. Boom. You have a nicely engraved dynamic there, right? So just the easiest thing in the world. It's like this is something that everybody should know. And the same thing works, if it were mezzo piano, right? Same thing, MP. All right. And even sforzando. The problem with sforzando, though, is if you hit Z or Z at the end, it erases everything. So you just have to go S, F, Z and let go of that. And then you can go back and just type Z again. Oops. And it'll come up in engraved type. So anyway, all right, so back to, away from Sibelius tips, back to your piece. So, since you didn't quite make it into the readings, the reading sessions for our first round, I can't recall. Did you do the first round of Violin? Sorry, it's just a big blur. All right, I'm just going to cut this part out. There was a lot in here that was very reminiscent of the unaccompanied violin scoring, especially like this part in here. This was just really great. Yeah, and then the piano was a really had some really great support playing, but it tended to sort of stay out of the way and allow the sense of the unaccompanied violin to continue on. Despite all of the frantic accompanying, it still had that. It still had that feeling of unaccompanied, or even, becoming somewhat concerto-like. This would be an interesting sketch for a concerto, really. Yeah, so that all worked pretty good. Contrastive register, you had it all really built right into your, built right into it. Here, obviously you can't really get off of the G string, but I would say maybe write Sol G anyway here, and just keep it, see how far you can get with your Sol G. You could get all the way to this B natural if you really wanted to in Sol G, and it just would make just a very spooky out there kind of sound. Now, in terms of lyrical phrasing, that was all pretty much there. I would say here, if you got this slide, you want your slur to go up to here. Okay, just continue on, right? And the same thing here. Always mark, unless you want slide and then change bow, which is also possible. It's just much smoother to have all of your slides slurred. It's just the easier thing to do for the player, I think. Otherwise, they may actually assume that you want slide and then change bow, which I mean, it's its own sound, but I'm not sure that that's what you want there. Okay. Okay. So moving onwards here, we should talk a little bit about separating out the functions, and and like, do things contrast? Do they have their own sense? Their own unique sense here. So very good, because like the kind of the mechanical repetition of articulations from the piano. That's just that is typical, and then you've got this much more ferocious um, open string D, which is a sound that the piano can never get. So even though both were really kind of playing a sort of hammering away at the semiquavers, you still had that sense of the two instruments having different roles to play, even though they were very similar, and they often did unisons. Right? I like that a lot. Um, then just really good use of chords, and just back and forth. This bantering, that is really excellent as well. And then of course the octave separation between this unison, that was just brilliant. Okay, very very nice. You can see that just the registers of the instruments are being respected. Okay, now here I'm not so sure that that this bowing really works, and I can't recall exactly what Donald did, but just like this would be down, up, down, down, up, down. I just don't know if that really works for me. Might be easier just to find, if there's a stress, like you had this accent here, if you wanted it to be echoed in the violin part, that could be a place where you could have something like this. Oops, sorry. Right. You could have something like that, and then, oops, something like that might track with the music a little bit better. But I think that this just really long slur is going to get ignored by most violin players, because you have very little in the way of recovery, right? The bow always needs to recover to come back, right? So it's just going to require just a savage recovery, down. This is going to be a really big stroke, or stroke and separation, and then the bow jumps down so that you can get this all with an up bow. It's just not working, right? So that is a place where you can improve the bowing, just the bowing scheme, rather than lyrical phrasing of bowing, right? And this, something like this makes more sense, right? Or even this. Just get rid of that. Oops. Sorry, I'm not too good with that. Clicking on the keypad. Yeah, see, so that might work as well, something like that. Or even this, then you get even bowings, right? You get down, up, on this staccato, which allows you to hammer down on the downbeat again, right? So that might be another way of doing it. Yeah, but I mean, the characters, you got that characters, functions, texture, that was all really, really well done. But the only thing I would say in terms of regret is it just would have been nice to hear a more lyrical side. You know what I mean? Just a little bit more of this would have been nice. And it would also have been kind of cool to see more nuances. You know what I mean? I mean, what would it hurt to do, forte piano, excuse me, have things sort of move around a little, right? Rather than being frozen at piano. Because you've got all this, I mean, you probably heard that Donald just really leaned into some of these phrases and played them much louder than just this piano that you marked over here. So if he's going to make those decisions about your work, why don't you make those decisions for him, right? And you decide what what all the nuances or what many of the nuances are going to be, right? And also here, piano and or sorry, pianissimo to what? How does this all end, right? Do you want it to fade away? Do you want it to just stay, no diminuendo? You might even need to mark that if if like just say you know without diminuendo or something like that, because I would just feel that would be a natural thing. Just notice how they died away in the recording, in the reading. So that's my feedback on your score. Just really excellent work. I'm so glad that you joined up the course. People may not know, but Gretchen joined up kind of when I was in the last stages of accepting people for the readings. In fact, a bit past it, and yeah, and she just really has contributed some excellent scores along with everybody else. Just and I can't wait to hear what some of the other readings are going to be. All right, great work. Now we've got Brenden's piece, A Day in the Dream World, or A Day in a Dream World. And um, this is a very cool piece. There was a lot more that I could have said about the scoring than what we said during the feedback sessions of the readings. So I'm really happy to be able to follow up on this, especially because you use some very cool ideas that I think are worth pointing out to everybody else. So just a few little things. Once again, you don't need these little guys at the beginning. Just delete them. They're just a distraction. And just like I was just saying with to Gretchen in the previous evaluation, just really learn how to do this. Command or Control E to start your expression text, and then just keep your thumb on it and hit F. Right? Boom. Right? Nothing to it. Everybody should really learn this. Okay. Now, uh, Donald was completely correct in saying that you had left out. There were almost no slurs in the entire piece except for one bar right here. Right. Now, this seems to indicate that you like the idea of having full bar slurs. Right. So Donald tried it with just slurring in this particular way. Right. Which is a cool way of doing it. Or you could have done this. Right? You could have slurred on the half bar. Right? So, or, I mean, I just feel that those are ways that are much more idiomatic and that bring us around to the whole point of what we're doing, right? Is learning how to use bowing in a way that phrases things lyrically. I think especially when you get to a part like this, you have to decide what kind of pattern do you want. Now, Donald showed you what it was like to slur every beat, right? Or to slur like every two beats on a triplet pattern, which is even smoother. So, and it's actually better in some ways to do it this way because then the player can have all one bow, right? Can have all one up bow going into the crescendo, like this, right? And then you get the next one going the other direction, which is exactly follows. Oops, sorry. I hate that about the keypad. That exactly follows, right? That just works with the crescendo and diminuendo. That might be a better way to do it in the long run and just save fuss. Anyhow, so if this had been slurred through like that, I would have felt that you would have really hit the nail on the head with your lyrical phrasing and with your bowing, right? So here's an example of where you can really get them to work together. Now, in terms of contrast of register, I didn't really see a whole lot of things in here. I mean, it was really beautifully written for the range of the violin, but there were very few low notes. I mean, I don't think you really ever got to a place where you had to be on the G string. It would have been interesting to have some of this on the G string, though, like to have, say, this Sol G would have been a really cool sound. To have it like really high up on the G string. That would have been very, very neat. So there wasn't any of that, and I feel that was a little bit of something that you could have, you could have added for a better flavor. Okay. So all that aside, so those are our three primary concerns from the first lesson, right? Bowing, lyrical phrasing, contrast, and register. Now, studies of contrasts in terms of functions and textures and the character of each instrument. Now, I felt that what you did here with this lovely little, you start off on a unison and then you go to a harmony and then you go to somewhat of a contrapuntal approach. That was really cool. I mean, it didn't add up in terms of traditional counterpoint, but it was still very nice. Um, and yeah, I mean, you managed to keep the interest going, and that was really cool. And there was this one passage. Let me see if I can. I think it was this passage in here. Yeah, this area in here, where you had a bit of there was a bit of contrapuntal variety, and I thought that was very powerful. It just was a much more it was much fresher scoring, right? And then there was another one at the end, wasn't there? Or maybe my memory's playing tricks on me. Yeah, so this going into the imitation was really nice. I just felt that was extremely strong scoring. And then this was cool. You have the violin holding this note for quite a while, and then you just smack it right on the same pitch. So it's sort of like almost like this burst coming out of the same tone. That was a very cool idea. That's one worth worth imitating or stealing or whatever. I don't think you need to have such a wide difference in between the dynamics here. I think fortissimo against forte is fine for your purposes. But do you want to just keep that going all the way through here, and then you should write fortissimo sempre, right? Like this. Hold it down, get your double F, and then two spaces. Right. Sempre. You want just a little bit of a space in between these, right? And then you can just copy and paste. Take off one of these Fs, right? Then you've got this all worked out. You could have added some slurring, some phrasing to your piano, right? Like this. Oops. Right? See, that would be very nice. That would really help guide the player into feeling those lyrical phrases against, say, if you're doing, let's say that you were slurring the half bar with the violin, right? Then that's something that just like it kind of helps them work together, even though they've got different markings for their slurs, right? If this is going to be played in a beautiful sustained legato style, then you really should tell the pianist in some way that it's going to be legato, right? So you didn't really have contrasts of function that much, with the exception of some of the contrapuntal things that I mentioned. But you did have definitely the parts weren't just a bunch of unisons being played together, right? There were a few unison notes, but it was mainly harmonies and other kinds of things done in a really beautiful way, I felt. This was really neat. This part in here, where you have the harmony note in the piano played at a much shorter duration than the sustained note by the violin. That was just a great idea. Super idea. Once again, you could get even more contrast by marking that sol G, right? So you'd even get a tone that was even more divorced from the piano. So you want a sforzando on this chord, right? But you kind of have to mark that this is mezzo forte. Don't be afraid to just even mark it again here, right? Right? That's all well and good. I almost felt like this should have been that this hairpin could have started from here, right? And don't worry, both hands, right, can be both hands will pay attention to this. And then don't worry about this having to be a separate thing, right? You're being really specific about it, but this is just parallel dynamics, right? You don't need them. I mean, unless you're trying to tell the playback function in Sibelius to do something. So you don't really need that. Just leave it like that, all right? Okay, well, that's all I had to say about this score. But I love this piece. I'm really glad that I heard it. Just as as a musician and as a music lover, being interested in cool ideas, it just was really, really great. One last thing: soaring. Now, how much more would this soar if it were marked like this? Right? That would just be beautiful. That would really soar. Okay, so think about those things, and really looking forward to your next assignment. Now we have Mark Petersen's Tango, Mi Tango, Para Mook. So I have to say, Mark, I'm honored. It was very, very cool of you to dedicate this piece to the Mook. So if people just go back and look over the brilliant reading, I felt that Donald and Ludwig did. It was fun. It was funny. We had a lot of great suggestions, and we talked a lot about maybe changing the meter to 2/4, like a proper tango, and so on. And so I'm not going to go over that stuff too much again here. I feel it's already been done. Um, just a thought here, a little notational thing. If you do Command 4, like with the 4 on the keypad of your computer manual, you get a nice little quarter note. And then just go equals, whatever it was, right? So 100. So which is a very cool tango tempo, by the way. 100 beats per minute, 100, 104, 96. Those can be really cool. Okay. Yeah, so just really well defined roles for everything, right? Just setting aside everything else for now. Let's just thinking about functions. This was nice the way that the piano did a bit of unison here and did not play the harmony, right? So that left it up to the violin to play the harmonized double stops, and just notated the in 2 octaves apart what else was going on, and that was just a very, very cool sound. And then once again, just having a very well defined melody, and so on. Lyrical phrasing just was really good. The bowing for the most part was pretty good. And then of course, like as Donald pointed out, this is just really not quite possible. I mean, it's a cool idea to sort of feel, but it doesn't really quite work. There isn't quite enough time to do that, right? So, other than that, I feel this is kind of an A sharp, right? So watch out for that. So that just feels more right to me there. And same thing here, right? Just it's right under the dominant. So yeah, so that is all good and very nimble too. Like a lot of this, which is extremely nimble scoring and bowing. So yeah, all good. In terms of the textures, we worked out some of this already. We talked about a few parts. Um, when we did some kind of function crossing, voice crossing areas, like here, I think you might remember that I pointed out to Donald that pianissimo is just a little too soft to be surrounded by a nice aggressive piano like that. So, but I mean, it is a cool idea. I mean, this was very well scored. It just needed to be a higher dynamic, right? And just those are all really easy double stops on the violin and just very well placed. And then kind of turning the tables here, right? This all works really, really good. You might want to mark like the first, if you're going to just leave off of the staccatos, you might want to mark the first 3 and then just leave off the next 4 is a good way to do it. Or maybe mark them in the first bar and then leave them off the next bar, or whatever you're going to do. But don't just do one and then none, right? That's a little bit too unclear. This was also cool. I like this, this beneath the piano thing. Here, once again, you could mark both of them piano, right? And if you've been listening, I'm gonna say this again to everybody, that the easiest, just the easiest thing in the world, Command E, Command P, right? Or Control P, Control E, Control P. You got your thumb on the control button already, right? So there's no need to just type this ugly, which sorry, which I feel is just a really not a very pretty, for expression text. I don't feel Plantain is a very beautiful text. I just don't think it's that great. Um, so I wasn't really sure when you say grandioso. I think you need to make sure it's a little closer to your violin, and since it is really more of an expression suggestion, right? Then maybe you should put it down. Just change it to italics, and then put it down here. Because if you're going to put it up here and you want everybody to be grandiose, then that's something different entirely, right? That would be um, Option Command T or Option Control T, and then you would just write it up here as system text, right? And then both parts read it, and it's nice and big. All right, now one last little bit of scoring advice that I'm going to have for you is just typing I, selecting the violin, and just, selecting small, right? And then you have a much better, that's really the way that pianists want to read it. So yeah, so in the future, piano scores for like piano trio, piano duo, piano quartet, make sure that you've got the string parts in small type, right? And these things can go away too. All right, see there, beautiful clean score. All right, now this is really good. These rolled chords, and I like the variation too between rolled and unrolled chords against this beautiful descending kind of just this very fiery right hand melody. Almost wonder though whether or not you couldn't have put in a slur right there, maybe, to kind of follow. Just maybe you forgot to put that in there. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I could just go on and on about this, how this score kind of did what it needed to do without me really saying anything too critical. Um, One thing I want to point out is that you might have noticed that this was a little less successful, in the end, sounding a little less successful sounding than you probably had hoped. But that is just Donald needing a little bit more time to practice, because he's going ba 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 ba, and this is actually going to be, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So one of the reasons why is just because it just jumping down to hit that A, just jumping across to hit that A, because as things become more and more just all on the E string, it just is going to take a little bit of practice from Donald. That's not that that part is actually wrong at all, right? So don't lose faith in this just because Donald didn't get it right at the first reading, right? Because it would work really, really well. Your instincts are correct there. Okay, and then once again, just hit enter to get the correct enharmonic on that. So yeah, and this, it just all really, really worked well. Accent, perhaps, maybe just yeah, or something to match the articulation of the other part. Yeah, so just once again, very strong scoring. I think anybody who felt that they wanted a little bit more examples of really, of stronger functions, and then the characters of the instruments, yeah, then this would be a good score to study, definitely. Just, and it's also just has a really, really great, it just is really a great genre music, and would be great in like a kind of a comedy tango, film score or something like that. It would just be absolutely perfect. Great work. Now we've got this piece by Carrie. Now Carrie moved up from the dotted brev to the Longa level about a month or two ago, and so he wasn't in time to get the piano and violin duo readings. So what I'm going to do instead is, there's kind of no reference video for that. So I'm going to play this video, the playback for this, just make the Sibelius make its own little video out of the footage for you guys to listen to. So let's have a listen and a view of that before we get started on the evaluation. And don't worry, Carrie, I'll give you the full 10 minutes. Okay, so here comes Carrie's evaluation for real. So now that we've had a chance to listen to that, obviously the balance was just really off on that recording. It was just using Note Performer and so on. So anyway, but all that aside, let's not worry about that. Just some very beautiful, cool, tranquil ideas. Now, I'm going to spend like 1 minute just talking about a few notational issues and just kind of help you around with your Sibelius scoring. Okay, so we're just gonna do a couple minutes of that. All right, so here you've got all these pedal lifts in a row. Okay, I'm going to show you something you do a little different here. All right, so I'm going to erase that, select the note in question, type L, and do pedal lift again. Okay, and then that can go to there, and we can just do that again. In fact, since these are the same exact length, you can just copy it and paste it, right? And then you get a series of You get just a series of notes, and then of course if you want that to end right there, well, let's say that you want to do 4 more notes. All right, then you could just do pedal lift finally. Okay, there you go. Right, so that's a much better way of doing it, and it doesn't look so cluttered. All right, so that's just one thing that I would suggest to you. There are some other things here that are really unorthodox, and I think that most pianists would be complaining about it. Like for instance here, it would be better for you to score like this. Don't do Atabasa in a right hand treble part unless unless it is really truly. Hang on a second. Let me lock this. Oops. Wrong one. Okay, and then drop this an octave. All right, so that would be much more acceptable to a pianist. In fact, you could just move this back to here, right? Okay, and then that would be a way better way to write this out, right? But don't do ottava bassa in a right-hand treble part. They just notate 2 bass clef. Now here you do kind of the opposite thing, going ottava in a left-hand part, and once again, you can't do that. You've got to just hit your just go an octave higher and get rid of this. Okay, and then if that is a lot of ledger lines, that's true. So you just jump in and you drop in this guy right here. Actually, hang on. Let's do something else first. Let's give us some insurance so we don't get lost. Put the return to bass staff here, and then put our treble clef here, right? There you go. And you could even move this back to here if you wanted to. All right. But that's just so much better. So see, now you're reading it in treble, and yeah, that is really what the pianist is going to want to see there, okay? Now I'm going to give you one more little notation tip before we proceed with our real evaluation, and that is this right here. Don't mess up the middle of a 2/4 bar, right? So this has got to be notated like this. So check it out. Take away the dot, put in a tie, turn this into a D. Okay, so and that's the problem solved, right? So don't do that, whatever that was, crossing this. And the same thing here, right? This leaves out that. So this has got to be just a regular old quarter note. And then this can be also a D, and then you just tie the 2, right? You could even do this. You could even turn this into a dotted quarter note tie, right? So that's another thing you could do. But don't split the middle of a 4/4 bar. You probably know this already. And you might have just left out, just like not proofread that. Now here, look, you don't need ottava bassa there. Boom. You're good, right? A pianist can read that. They will know. It's a little strange, though, to leave out the D above. It's going to, I guess you want to pedal it out, and that's a bit of a subtle thing. But yeah, and this, yeah, once again, hang on. Bass clef here, treble clef here, maybe right there, and then get rid of that, up an octave, right? So that's how to do it. Don't put ottava bassa under a right hand staff or over a left hand staff, right? Go up to the next clef. All right, so that's my little lesson there. Okay, now real evaluations can commence. So in terms of bowing and lyrical phrasing, you've got just these wonderful long notes, and that is great. I felt that, just looking over all the assignments, there could have been longer extended notes in all assignments, and it's kind of good to see them from here and there. But yeah, this is good. I would actually score, with all respect, that is a stronger slur than what you had before, right? And then this, right, is also very strong, or even that is also very strong. But here, don't let me mess up your, don't let me rewrite your score for you. But yeah, but that is a little bit, because this is coming together. You want things to kind of come together with the beginning of this phrase in the piano when these octaves, right? So that's a weak entrance slurring over from another note in the violin, right? It just doesn't really quite match up that well. Um, but yeah, but other than that, it's yeah. And once again, this is what you're doing here. Just do that here, right? Just easy as that. So slurring was good. Lyric phrasing is pretty good. Now let's talk a little bit about what's possible in terms of about your double and triple stops. Okay, so this is possible. These D octaves. Let's give a little bit more of a view. Yeah, so the D octaves all good, but check this out. This is not possible because you can't really sustain three notes for longer than just a fraction of a beat, right? Because this is going to be more like a grace note, right? So you could easily do this grace note. You go D bum, right? But you can't go D and holding everything up there at the same time. That's not going to work, right? And same thing here, right? So that is, I mean, I understand the idea. It's a very cool idea, but it's not going to work, all right? So this is just, you could, you could change that to this. Hang on. I wonder if you can just change that to a grace note. No, you can't. Okay. Something I've never tried to do. You could just do this. Right? Actually, this is better below. Just do X. Right? That is a lot more clear of what you want from the violinist. And Donald would probably suggest that if he could, right? So, and I think you do something similar later on. Yeah. So now here, you have to do that here. There's no way you can sustain this D all the way to there. Okay. Much less just two beats here. But here, if you could play that high A, or sorry, that high D on the A string and this low open D, well, I mean, you might possibly be able to reach that high D, but just the problem there is that the low D, or the open D, is going to be so bright, and the top D is going to be so squished because it's in such a high position. It may not come out sounding that good, right? So, and the violinist is going to want to play this on the E string anyway, right? And they'll feel that this is a string crossing that doesn't work, right? So yeah, so I don't feel that this is. I mean, it's just barely possible, but it's not likely, right? It's not going to be very good results. Yeah. So just watch out for that. All right. And once again, same thing here. This D thing is possible. This is a little, I mean, this is not quite as insane. Not insane, sorry, I don't want to put you down. But this is really, really far apart. This is more likely. This could just possibly work. Okay? All right, now let's go back to the beginning of the piece and talk a little bit about, our staples. So contrasts of register, I felt there were some good ones in there, and I think you could have even done more, right? You could have marked, for instance, you could have marked this Sol G to really make sure that once you went on to these higher pitches, that you would maintain that sense of, of just really that searching note below. And then, of course, go back to normal here. You can't play this Sol G. That's too high. But yeah, or this could have been Sol D, this part in here. So there could have been, there were ways that you could have isolated some of these things. Yeah, this would have been beautiful Sol G. Even going as far as here would have been great Sol G. And then here, leading into there, you want to change to normal. Right. Yeah, and I did also like the dynamic contrast. I like the fact that you marked you just marked the living daylights out of those dynamics, and you gave yourself plenty of places to make inflections. Now here, I think you could have made more inflections. You know what I mean? You say P espressivo, and then you've got no you've got no hairpins marked at all. So what are you expressing, right? I mean, you might just like that should be vibrato or something like that. Now watch out for this. This is really confusing to a player and to me as an engraver. You got a tie mark there. You mean a slur, right? Oops, darn it. Yeah, so yeah, so don't put in a tie instead of a slur because you really can tell the difference even if a person is sight reading on the fly. Okay, so contrast of register, they were all good. And as I mentioned before, yeah, your lyrical phrasing, that was good. Bowing, pretty good. Um, Now, the contrast between the functions and the textures was just excellent. Just really, I think most people who are following along would really agree that you just really did have some differentiation there between the functions. It was really easy to feel what instrument was really clearly illustrating what on what kind of character and everything else. It just was very nicely delineated. Um, I mean, you could have gotten even more out of it, but I'm not going to create different things for you. You can find those out on your own. But yeah, but I mean, overall, it's a strong score. I feel that it needs a little bit more editing. Do you know what I mean? There's just a little bit more that you could add. And as I mentioned to an earlier student, there's nothing wrong with just sticking just an enormous, if that's what you mean, right? Or maybe not there. If you mean this, then mark it, right? If you just really if you want the pianist to really feel a group of notes that have a different definite direction, then mark it. But be warned that it's you know you really do need more inflections in your piano part, right? I feel like what is going on here. I just felt like the pianist didn't really know, right? That you can see what's going on in the violin part, but what is the pianist doing as they go for this high point here and then this accent? What's going on there? Is the player intended to increase into something? And is this the high point of something? Is this for mezzo forte or forte or something? Okay, so but other than that, that's good. Don't stay in mezzo piano too long. Can't repeat that enough. It seems like the violin never quite really reaches any kind of loud dynamic anywhere, right? And I almost feel like there's something backwards about the dynamics in here. When they've got this big, huge, you're kind of going up to this thing. Since you're not marking whether this is just supposed to be very incredibly discrete, like Debussy type dynamics with just very beautiful chords that are kind of floating off into nothing. And if that is so, then you really need to mark this because the pianist has got no guide into how to support the violin, right? You just really need to have dynamics that are clearer in terms of the support dynamics, right? But other than that, I just really like the score, and I'm so happy, Carrie, that you were able to become a Longa student, and I can give you this more detailed feedback. And we got to find a way to work you into the future readings that are coming up. Because you are maintaining your output. I think you're up to the 6th assignment now, so I will be in touch with you about how to get in on the readings that are coming up because we do need more scores. Some people have sort of dropped out, and it's completely understandable. I don't blame anybody for having taken a break from the Moooc or my own life has just been so crazy and trying to figure out a way to do this and to catch up from all the stuff I had to go through last year. So if people's situations have changed and they need to do something else, that's totally cool. But the people who are now coming into the course could take up some of the slack and make sure that we have nice we have longer reading sessions and more involvement from the players as well. Okay, so great job, and really looking forward to evaluating the next one. All right, so here's Jeff's piece, "The Meadow." I'd hoped to do the third round of scores, but I can hear there's some sort of rock concert starting out. This is today is Waitangi Day, which is it's kind of like New Zealand's 4th of July kind of day. So there's stuff going on that I've got to, it's probably going to make too much noise soon. So anyhow, this is going to be the last one, and this was just a really sweet, wonderful pastoral piece, and I'm going to give Jeff a little bit of extra time on this, and just a few things I want to point out some notation stuff, and then we'll talk about the scoring. But I'm going to give you 13, 14 minutes here, Jeff, because there are just a few things I want to cover with you, like some of the other Moooc students. Now here you got this pickup here. Try notating to match the way that these rests are sitting. It really should be and, like 2 and here, 3 and, right? So starting on the and of 2, then 3 and. So that's got to be expressed here, right? So you can just do that here by just orienting that forwards, right? It just is much better. Now here you had this grouping here, and I know what you want here. You just really want this to feel kind of like this, just about like that, with a bit of a phrase going in, right? You just really want that kind of a feeling there. So it's better to sometimes you've got the beams like this. Oops, sorry. Sometimes you've got your beam groupings like this, but the other way is better, right? Because it really gives people, there is the 1, there is the 2, and here is the 3, right? Because otherwise, this other way, this really kind of almost looks and feels like triplets. So, you could easily do this, right? Right? That's totally fine. That works for me. Or you could even, have the whole thing as a group of, if you really wanted to, you could go like this. But I just feel anything that is really clearly shows that this is 3, 4. It's a 3 scored against 3 sets of 2s, right? I think that is a better way to go. All right. So that was one notational issue. I think there was this one other one. Look, I'll just solve it when I get to it. Yeah. Okay. If it's there. So just a little thought here. We talked about whether or not these should be slurred, and Donald, I think, showed you, that you could slur each one, and you could even slur more under the same bow. Like this could be an up bow and that could be a down bow, right? The up bow going into a crescendo and then the down bow coming out of it. That is a possible way of doing it as well. But hey, just like I've been mentioning to some of these other students, why not that, eh? Why not that, right? So it's okay to tell the pianist that there's something going on there in terms of phrasing. And also, why is the pianist mezzo forte and the violinist mezzo piano, right? Shouldn't the violinist stand out a little bit, or be at least kind of equal dynamics to the, and what's going on here? You've got to change from mezzo piano to forte, but the pianist has got nothing, right? So a resourceful accompanist will look and see what the soloist is doing and play under anyways. So right here, Ludwig figured out a way to kind of make it all work. But you don't want to do anything that suddenly, like, you're suddenly jumping up from mezzo piano to forte here while the piano is just playing nothing but mezzo forte. It's just not the easiest way to do it. Okay, now back to here. You could have just said P dolce, right? That's where it goes, right after the dynamic. You could have said P dolce and had more hairpins in here, right? And the violin would stand out beautifully. It does not need to be marked up a dynamic from the piano necessarily, right? The violin does not need to be marked up a dynamic. But yeah, you need to give shape. Give more shape to your phrases, right? And not just slurring. Now, speaking of which, I mean, there could have been. This is such a beautiful, nice, long, kind of long and slow piece in a lot of ways that you could have marked more. This could have been. You could have slurred like this easily, right? And just really gotten a full amount of beautiful, smooth phrasing out of this as well. And you could have even, followed your slurs like this, right? And could have kind of really let it breathe. Or even just like this, right? So there's a bunch of things that you could have done there. Here, I'll just undo all of that. So yeah, so more, I would say more lyrical phrasing, you know, but your awareness of the bowing was pretty cool for most of it. Now this, as you probably saw from Donald, this is the way to do stuff like this, right? Just under one bow, just to really, especially if you want that folk feel, right? That just really is the way to go with that. And this could even be phrased in anticipation, like slurring into the next beat kind of thing, right? And then, right? So there's a lot more you could have done, more work that you could have done on the bowing in these sections. And notice you've got this slur over here. Really should end here, right? And same thing here, right? That's totally fine. This doesn't really need slurs. The left hand doesn't really need that kind of slurring. I think that there's an understanding of how it should go, right? But yeah, that's totally cool. I really like that. So yeah, mezzo forte is cool. Stay away from mezzo piano. It means less than what you think, and especially like mezzo piano before a forte, it just didn't quite feel right. And then mezzo piano here, just yeah, this is a beautiful, slow, pastoral, bluegrassy kind of piece in a way. And like, I just feel you should let things take longer to change, right? Unless you want really abrupt, like emphases on certain ends of phrases or certain parts, right? Try to stay away from mezzo dynamics. They're not really helping this piece out a lot, right? Once again, P would be great with inflections, right? Just so much better. I love the idea of pizzicato here. It was just really, really gorgeous. And I thought this was really excellent. But once again, so much slicker, right? Da 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 dum, da 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 da, right? Instead of da 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 dun, right? It just has a better flow to it. Yeah, and then here, soar. Do you know what I mean? These slurs will give you wings on those high notes. Same thing here. Ah, darn it. Sorry, my mouse isn't obeying me. Right. So there are just ways of doing this that are even more lyrical. It's like the direction that you're going in anyways, but just needs more, needs more indulgence. Okay, so those are my thoughts on bowing, lyrical phrasing, contrasts of register. I felt that wasn't as huge of a concern with this, but there were a few things that you might have done, maybe, might have been interesting. I don't know. You don't really need to do, like, say, Sol D at the beginning, or, I mean, that maybe might make it a little bit more sweeter and emotional, but just not really needed at all. Yeah. Um, yeah, maybe some bowing effects, though, like, say, maybe Sol Tosto here or there, or maybe a harmonic or two. Now, here in this area, I thought of something when I was watching the video. What if you had scored it like this? This is just a suggestion, mind you. You don't have to do... Oops, sorry. That's not what I want. What if you had scored this? Right? Right? And then... Right? See, now that would be very slick and very bluegrassy, throwing in those open strings just like, because they're really easy to catch as the player is ascending. No, really no big deal at all for them to do that, but for them to play two in a row is what's hard, right? And just to kind of get them with any kind of, especially as it rises, it might maybe wanting to cross over to the E string here. It just kind of forces some awkward stuff onto the violinist. So anyway, so that was my thought on that. How you could actually keep some of what you had intended here. I know what you're going for, that wonderful folk feel of violin. Yeah, and you could do something similar here as well. Just cut out, just don't do two in a row, right? Here, I'll enlarge that. And that was also perfectly fine. Oops. All right. Ah. Sorry. Sorry about that, everybody watching. So yeah, so that is a much better way, I think, of holding on to some of that. This could even be, right? That would also be very bluegrassy, doing that. And that keeps the A from being forced up so high on the D string. Or on the A string, I meant to say. Okay. So that kind of covers some of our initial concerns about about our from the first lesson. And then in terms of the contrast, function, texture, character, and so on, this piece kind of had one character. It's a lot like the tango piece that we heard, and one or two other pieces that had that wonderful kind of pastoral down home flavor that violin can do better than anybody. That you really had sort of set that as your approach, and did it really, really well all the way through. I would say this works because it climbs out of this hole in here, where the pianist is sort of just playing this little slightly syncopated rhythm here. But if it stayed around the same place, it might become difficult to differentiate. Same thing here. You've got these two guys working against each other, and I feel you've got the dynamics backwards, right? I mean, you may feel that this line is more important than that line, but it's basically burying it, right? That this was one of the less successful phrases, right? You're echoing it here, and that's all works great. Maybe if this is not really that important of a part, why not have the violin play something similar to this? I obviously cannot play this because you can't play this as a double stop that low on the violin, but something similar, if that is really what you want here. But if you're going to do this, just maybe work it up a little, change the dynamics a little bit, and just watch out for E and a, right? You're going to E and a 3. I felt that was a little less effective because this hits so hard, right? 2 1 1 and 2 E and a, and that E, the E and a, the 2E kind of felt a little too much like a pronounced note, which, like, to fit into these two, the pianist and the violinist could definitely work that up so it would feel more natural, but maybe a lower note, to fall into the rhythm is a little bit less, gouging of what the beautiful line is in the piano, right? So those are places where the function just needs a little work in terms of the scoring. And the texture of it, just really that broad tone of the violin, you couldn't really go wrong, right? And the ending was just beautiful and eloquent. I would say don't mess with this. Sorry, don't mess with this ending at all. Just kind of leave it pretty much unchanged. I would just basically say, yeah, don't mess with that. Not the bowing, not anything. Just the wonderful way that of the simplicity of it is just perfect for what you need to do. Except, you need to guide a little bit more in terms of inflections, dynamic inflections. If there's anything that you can say here dynamically in terms of breathing, you know what I mean? To breathe into something, breathe out of it, and maybe, diminuendo towards the end, then you should say it. All right? Okay, great piece once again.